Hello, my friends. Yesterday, Trump made a bold statement about Putin and is now threatening sanctions on Russian oil. Meanwhile, the Finnish president met with Trump and proposed setting a deadline for a ceasefire. During his visit to the US, Finnish President Stubb suggested April 20 as the date for a comprehensive ceasefire in Ukraine. He believes this date could be symbolic. Easter falls on this day for both Catholics and Orthodox Christians in 2025, and it marks 3 months since Trump inauguration. Will this plan work? That remains a big question. Do you believe April 20 could bring a full ceasefire? And can Trump put enough pressure on Putin within the next 20 days to end the war? Drop your predictions in the comments. And today, Trump made a shocking statement. Under US law, he can't serve more than 2 terms as president, but he just said he knows how to bypass this restriction and plans to do it. In an NBC interview, Trump stated, I'm not joking about a potential third term. I love working. I'm not joking, but it's too early to think about it. Many people want me to do it, but we have a long way to go. I'm focused on the present. When asked about a possible loophole where Vice President Vance could run, win, and then hand over the presidency, Trump responded, that's one way, but there are others. For context, the US Constitution's 22nd Amendment, passed in 1947, limits presidents to 2 terms. Friends, is Trump trying to follow Putin's playbook? What do you think? Meanwhile, the war continues, so let's move on to the situation in the Kursk direction, which is now effectively shifting toward the Sumy direction. Ukrainian forces confirm that the operation is coming to an end, despite official reports still indicating that a small part of the Kursk region remains under Ukraine's control. Fighting is now moving closer to the border, and geolocation data clearly shows that most of the territory is in the gray zone. Under Ukraine's control, Oleshnya, Горнель, and part of Huyeva. Meanwhile, Russians still controls roads near the village of Yunakivka to complicate Ukraine's ability to bring in reinforcements. In Vasilivka, no new Russian attacks have been reported, but it's becoming clear that the village is now under their control. Official confirmation from Ukraine is still missing, so we're awaiting. In the Belgorod direction, no significant changes have been recorded. Russian forces continue shelling border villages in the Sumy region. No reports have emerged about further Ukrainian operations, so for now we wait. In the Kharkiv direction, shelling continues, but no offensive actions have been recorded. Battles in Vovchansk are ongoing, although Russian forces have made no new advances. Now let's move straight to the Pokrovsk direction. Here, the Russians are storming Novoalexandrivka, pushing toward Novosergiyevka and Udachne, assaulting Kotline, Lysivka, Миролюбівка, Єлизаветівка, and breaking through near Tarasivka. At the same time, heavy shelling doesn't stop. Just last evening, at least 8 strikes hit Pokrovsk. The entire frontline area remains under attack by Russian drones. This means not only Ukrainian forces are actively using unmanned aerial vehicles, but the Russians as well. However, it's very important to note that the Ukrainian forces are still managing to hold the defense, and over the past 24 hours, there have been no changes along the front line. In the Kurakhove direction, the Russians are not decreasing the activity. Attacks are ongoing in Kotlarivka and Preobrazhenka, while they are storming Konstantinopel and Rozliv. So far, there have been no changes along the front line in the past 24 hours, but the situation remains difficult. The Russians claim to have entered the village of Rozliv, but current reports indicate that they are only breaking through to the outskirts and haven't yet been able to take full control. As a result, battles are still ongoing here. In the Velika Novosilka direction, fighting continues around Skudne, while Russian forces are also pushing toward Vilne Pole. Battles are taking place near Novosilka and Novopil. Activity here remains high, but for now, Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling all attacks, with no changes recorded in the past 24 hours. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, fighting continues near Lobkove and Kamiansk, but so far there have been no new advances by the Russians. Ukrainian forces are managing to repel all attacks, and the front line has been halted again. We're waiting to see how events will develop as the Russians are accumulating reserves for further attacks. This is currently relatively easy for them as a railway now runs directly from Russia to the occupied territories with a route extending to Melitopol. This has significantly increased the speed of reinforcing their positions. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue their attempts to cross the river to the right bank, but so far they haven't achieved any success. At the same time, they're actively shelling Kherson and Antonivka, primarily using FPV drones. Now let's move on to the Toretsk direction. The Russians continue their attempts to regain positions in Toretsk, so there are essentially counterattacks taking place. Fighting continues in Krymsk and they are storming Dachne and Delivka. Further south, the Russians are storming Pantelemonivka and Alexandropol, but there have been no changes in the front line over the past 24 hours. For now, the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling all attacks. In the direction of Chasiv Yar, the Russians have significantly intensified their efforts and are trying to advance on a wide front towards Konstantinivka. This is evident. Today, attacks on Maiske have been recorded, and fighting is ongoing in the central part of Chasiv Yar. They are storming Stupochki, Pretechene, breaking through to Alexandru Shultine, Bila Gora, and also fighting near Kurdyumivka in the fields. The situation is extremely complex. There hasn't been such high activity here for a long time, so we are waiting to see how this new wave of attacks will end. The Russians also struck Slovyansk and claimed to have hit a munitions depot. If this is confirmed, it clearly shows that the Russians are trying to weaken the Ukrainian forces in this direction to advance further towards Konstantinivka. That's why we are witnessing such a large amount of offensive activity today. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are breaking through near Ivano-Daryivka and storming Pereizne, but there have been no changes over the past 24 hours and activity remains low. Meanwhile, in the direction of Chasiv Yar, the storming of Zarichne, Yampolivka, Kolodezi, Lipove and Novomykhailivka continues. There have been no major changes yet, but the situation here is also difficult. Geolocation footages continues to appear showing the Russians using FPV drones to target Ukrainian military equipment near Zaporizhzhia and Kolodezi. Recently, the Russians claimed they had broken through to the village of Nove, but there have been no confirmations of this so far, and the fighting continues. In the direction of Borova, the activity is again minimal. Attacks on Boguslavka continue, and fighting is ongoing near Raihorodka. There have been no breakthroughs over the past 24 hours, and the situation remains unchanged. To the south, the Russians continue to occasionally break through to Olgivka across the fields, but all attacks are successfully repelled. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are storming Petropavlovka and breaking through near Pishane. The shelling of Kupiansk continues, but the Russians have made no progress. The front line remains unchanged over the past 24 hours. In the Dvorichna direction, the Russians continue attacks on Kamenka. However, despite these attacks being recorded for the third day, the activity remains low and all attacks are successfully repelled. Therefore, the situation remains unchanged. Meanwhile, it's reported that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are against a ceasefire in Ukraine. A ceasefire in Ukraine could significantly increase security threats for the Baltic countries. As the publication writes, Russia would use the pause to rearm and deploy troops to the northeastern flank of NATO. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania fear that Moscow will not stop in Ukraine and is already planning to ramp up military production and deploy additional forces along their borders. This is especially concerning after the Zapad exercises scheduled for the fall in Russia and Belarus. Estonia's defense minister Hanno Pevkur noted that of the 600,000 Russian troops in Ukraine, about half could be quickly redeployed, increasing pressure on the Baltic states. His Lithuanian counterpart Dovilė Šakalienė emphasized that Russia uses the ceasefire to accelerate its military build-up, making illusions about ending its ambitions after Ukraine dangerous. As seen, they want the war to remain solely on Ukrainian territory, so their cities are not destroyed by the Russians. No one wants war on their land. Unfortunately, NATO hasn't fully provided Ukraine with weapons needed to defeat Russia. There is no modern aviation, no long range missiles in the required quantities, nothing that could truly change the situation on the front lines. Meanwhile, Lavrov continues to make negative statements against European countries.
The trend of rewriting history, equating criminals declared as such by the Nuremberg Tribunal and the liberators of Europe, has been going on for quite some time in the Baltics, Poland, and several other EU countries. This is a trend that must be fought against very harshly.
As it seems, the Russians are focused on achieving their goals. However, with a high probability, it can be said that Russia may only move towards Europe if the US leaves NATO. Only then would the likelihood of an attack significantly increase. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.